Hi, my name is Eddie Kim. I'm the site planner, and thank you for letting us propose a plan on behalf of the City Council.
The City of Yorktown is considering proposals from several real estate developers for plans to revitalize the blighted neighborhood of Elmwood.
We plan on putting a lake or a big kind of like pond in the middle as our focal point.
Elmwood is a fictional place, but many communities across the country face similar problems.
Actually, the number's going to be about 1.5 million.
These students from Alameda High School in Northern California are presenting solutions at the culmination of a 3-week project-based learning exercise called Urban Plan.
Urban Plan was designed to take required economics and required government classes out of their silos and put them together in a way that students all of a sudden have like, oh, I get it. So I aced my standardized test. I know how to write an answer about supply and demand. But when I do urban planning, now I understand why I can't afford to live in the town I live.
So I just want to reiterate that there isn't like, oh yeah, you have to put in tons of parks, or you have to put in skyscrapers to generate all this money. There are many possible answers. That's the point of reality.
Developed at UC Berkeley, the Urban Land Project is available to schools in many cities through the Urban Land Institute's district councils.
And then you've got neighborhood letters, which are the interest groups that are so far set forward. It's really wonderful.
It is a rigorous project that addresses most of the state economics curriculum standards, like marginal cost benefit, allocation of goods and services, and the role of incentives.
The drive is a historic building, and you can read a little bit about it and what kind of uses you can do with it. There are limits on this building, you have to do this. This building, you do whatever you want.
To make it easy on teachers, the Land Institute provides everything they need for the project, from outside expert volunteers to laptops and Legos.
All the materials are paid for. The Lego kits, the teacher's guide and lesson plans, the curriculum handbooks, the site plans, everything delivered to the teacher.
The idea that you can't really be entirely creative and there are these rigid requirements on building heights, appearances, locations is realistic. So you're thinking creatively, and you just got to think differently.
Students use the Legos to create a model of their new neighborhood, and the computers are loaded with the sophisticated software they need to solve complex dilemmas.
It's too high. Yeah, it's way too high. How do we kill our percent but still make the city go up?
They are broken into teams of 5, and each student serves in a specific role, like site planner, director of marketing, or neighborhood liaison.
My role as a financial advisor was basically just to make profit for both the investors and the city.
They must become experts in their individual roles and share their ideas with the group.
This project has things that are going to stick with the students more in their life. Working with different people they didn't like, speaking in front of strangers, thinking about something from a different point of view, you know, thinking about design, appreciating the world that they live in, politically, aesthetically, working on spreadsheet.
To neighborhood retail, for example, the absorption rate is 2.86, which is pretty close to our upper limit, because the optimum absorption rate is 3. And mid-rise office building, we actually went over that, so it's a problem we have to solve.
Students must deal with all kinds of problems, like balancing parking lots with open space,
You can make this park smaller, parking really big.
generating sufficient returns,
Raising 10,656,000 and losing 1 million.
and addressing the conflicting priorities of neighborhood interest groups.
I don't know, if we put in a homeless shelter and the neighborhood alliance gets mad, then they're just going to be bothering city council to death. You know, they're just going to be knocking on the door.
In the second week, real estate professionals who serve as facilitators come to class to discuss the initial designs, sometimes providing a harsh reality check.
Affordable housing right now is 50-50 for one building.
50-50.
Okay.
So I don't like to tell them what to do. I really would like to ask hard questions. If they have the homeless shelter, I immediately say what difficulties would that pose to you. If they don't have it, I ask them immediately, oh, so you move the homeless shelter, where are the homeless going to be? And you can deal with the issues both ways, but the important thing here is to deal with the issue, confront.
We're supposed to follow like the primary goals, and one of them is to remove the blighting influences. And we thought that the homeless shelter just brought everything down.
Going into the project, we think, oh, that's easy. You know, I can just
put some Legos here, that link represents a building, and it's all good. But then you really have to think about the effects of what it's going to do.
What's going to be in these stores? Have you thought about any of that? What's going to pull people down here?
Restaurant.
Coffee shop?
Also, we had the experts come in and question us. Some of them were harsh, some of them were a lot nicer about it, but either way, we learned a lot from all of them, I'd say.
Yes. This way we have less offices and mid-rise. It's not small. We also have a mid-rise.
Is it a mid-rise? The project as a whole, it gets you ready for the real world. Just looking at the book, it gets pretty tedious. Like you're just looking in the book, you're memorizing facts and stuff. But once you learn how to actually use those facts, you get a deeper understanding and you can better interpret questions. And so you build up like really useful skills.
Our group is called Minesweepers Corporation, and our vision is to have a very diverse city that has more suburban feel. In our first block, we have retail, such as Macy's and Barnes & Nobles for the college students.
Presentation time is limited to 10 to 12 minutes, with each student speaking from the perspective of their individual role.
All right. I'm the financial analyst.
A question and answer period follows each proposal.
Is it going to be an animal shelter or an office?
It's divided into two.
It's true that there's no right answer, so we may challenge a question a lot. So a nonprofit office that acts as an animal shelter?
The way that you say it makes it sound like there's going to be dogs jumping on the office tables. We have nonprofit.
That's how council sees it.
The nonprofit in one section and office in one section, so like.
Let me just stop you about the logistics of it.
Yes.
What I'm interested in is, so you're putting in an SPCA, which I don't see either the city or the neighborhood requested, and you're not putting in the daycare center, police substation, any of the things that we offered to subsidize or that the neighborhood requested. Is that correct? That's correct. Thank you.
My group decided that it would be more important to include other things that weren't in I was just sitting at the computer typing in what they wanted. My job was to make sure that we made money. The city liaison's job was to say, you're not meeting all of our REE requirements. That was a big problem with our work.
The regional meeting is ended because we'll have coffee shops and laundromats.
Because the students are assigned a specific role, a teacher can evaluate how well a student understands and has worked on this role by the input they're bringing into class and the presentation they make. So a good student on a weak team can still get an A.
Victoria Row is 40% nonprofit. 10% of that is going towards artists, which is one of the demands of the community.
While students gain an appreciation for the challenges involved in development, teacher Rob Sultanen thinks the project offers even more valuable lessons.
For this project, there are always non-objective, non-traditional measure things that are curiosity, creativity, teamwork, passion. So I do it for those reasons, not because of the economics curriculum.
Favorite police substation, which will watch over the park.
I believe to be educated is to be thoughtful, to be wise, to have perspective, to step out of your worldview, and really accomplishes all those things.
We wanted to give people a sense of place, so we put the businesses near the businesses, as you can see here.
For more information on what works in public education.
So, what do you think? Any thoughts?
It's great stuff.
They really made it easy for the teacher.
This is true.
You don't have to do anything.
How come they didn't send you brown? How come they didn't send you brown labels then? Not tripping.
But you can see, obviously, a lot of intricate moving parts, you know, and as they articulated, no absolute wrong or right answers. It's all about trying to satisfy as many of the requirements as you possibly can and see what the ending result is.
She got probably seductive for not including an animal shelter.
Yeah, the animal shelter office, I think that was a really good.
She was like, you're not going to put any hopes in the dog.
Okay, all right, so let's do this. Let's go over these questions. All right, so the very first one, what's the purpose of an RFP? First of all, what is it?
Request
for proposals. This is the most common way that a local government is going to effectively let developers know they have a project that they want assistance with, okay? You can pretty much hop online and Google RFP for development, you know, and type in, you know, a state or a city, and usually it'll pop up, you know, different proposals that have been initiated by those local governments. Because usually cities have a situation much like, you know, what you've got here, that where an area has deteriorated, a lot of the land is maybe now vacant, and the city has maybe assembled that land themselves with the idea that it's going to be redeveloped. But they're going to want to obviously have a say-so in the control of what actually goes there. So the RFP is a great way to kind of share their vision with the development community. And sometimes it's not an absolute. You know, sometimes, you know, there is room for negotiation depending on maybe how the market has shifted and that sort of thing. But at the same time, that RFP is mission critical to kind of move things forward. Okay, moving on. Look at the goals. What are the blighting influences? First of all, what is blight? Okay, eyesores, you know, kind of deterioration of the area. You know, it's everything from, you know, and it's not just the buildings themselves look deteriorated, but it's also infrastructure that maybe is deteriorated as well. That maybe, you know, in order for the area to be redeveloped, you may have to go in and put new water and sewer lines. You may have to put in new additional electrical capacity into the area. You may have to, you know, do a whole number of
businesses leaving the area.
Oh, I'm sorry? Yeah, you have businesses that are leaving the area for one reason or another. You know, many of the buildings, whenever they are going to be rehabbed, you may have to bring them up to current code compliance, and the cost of being able to do so may be prohibitive to actually being able to actually make it happen. I mean, I can't tell you how many local governments, you know, have this wonderfully, attractive building that, you know, is historic, and you know, everyone in the city loves it. But whenever you really look at the financial details, even if the city gave you the building, gave you the land, does not necessarily mean that it's still going to be cost effective for you to do the renovations if you're, you know, not able to potentially get the tenants in there. Okay? Yeah.
That's one thing with this project. The Victorian Road has asbestos, so the development.
So you have, yeah, a remediation cost.
Do all of that.
Absolutely, which drives up the cost of the redevelopment. So, you know, those are all very real sort of, you know, scenarios that, you know, to be faced. Okay, moving on. What are the city's goals and objectives for the redevelopment area?
Generate tax revenue.
Okay, big one, generate tax revenue. What else?
Create housing to meet the needs of mixed income.
Okay, mixed income housing. Okay. Increase employment. Those are all perfectly normal, rational, reasonable sort of public objectives by the local government. Okay, I think everybody, you know, can kind of agree those are kind of the normal ones that you're going to hear over and over again. Okay, moving on. Does one particular goal seem more important to you? If so, why? Excuse me.
I believe the mixed income groups, the need of mixed income groups, because I think that everyone should have the right, no matter the economic level, they have to have a home.
Okay. The mixed income housing, he's saying, is probably the most important because we need everyone to be housed. And so what do you think about this whole concept of mixed income housing? We're not talking about low income housing or high income housing or even middle housing. We're talking about mixed income, but effectively saying we're going to have a high rise, let's say, building or mid-rise building, and we're going to have certain units set aside within that building that are going to be for lower income individuals, or we're going to have, you know, certain units that are going to be set aside for higher income individuals. And, you know, I mean, do you think it's a good idea, bad idea?
I wouldn't go with the good or bad, but I do think it does bring down the property value of that area, because just in the mind state of someone that may be of a better influence, they may not want to have someone of a lower social class with them like that.
Okay. I mean, okay. Yeah.
Well, the proposal mentioned, you know, there needs to be housing for like the police, the firemen,
Yep.
you know, these are people.
What we call workforce housing.
Right.
Yep.
And I think there's a stigma when you say low, you know, mixed
Right.
income, you're gonna get somebody who's making $15,000 a year. They're just saying you need somebody, the average Joe, policeman, fireman, that can live there.
Right. Okay. Somebody else?
Now, I think if you put like a smaller percentage, you can get away with it. So if you have, you know, maybe only 10 or 15% of the housing in maybe a higher income building, it kind of like blends in better
Right.
than the other way around.
And I've seen it done several different ways in different cities. You know, in some instances, you would never know that it was mixed income. I mean, looking at the building or the facility, you would just simply say, okay, well, it's a nice looking housing project. But you know, the way that maybe they've allocated the units, they may have put the more expensive units higher up in the building, you know, or maybe the less expensive units may be interior units without as much, you know, light or whatever, you know, that are less desirable units to begin with. In other projects, it's almost just a total random, you know, sort of thing of just kind of saying, regardless of you know, whether it's low income or you know, higher income, we're just going to kind of, you know, mix them all completely together. In other projects, they have completely segmented to the point of actually having separate entrances for, you know, the higher income and the lower income. You know, so it's like, you know, what approach is absolutely ideal or the best? You know, that's not for, you know, me to judge. It's more of, I think you just need to be aware of that as a type of housing, it is one that you're going to be asked to provide in a lot of instances as an urban developer, especially in a redevelopment project, in order probably to get not just government assistance, but also maybe to help facilitate the project, kind of grease the wheels a little bit with the local government to kind of move things forward, because you're helping them achieve some of their own goals. Okay? All right, moving forward. The dictionary defines the noun demand as the need and desire for something. How does this definition differ from the concept of market demand?
Building to attract, it's not service.
Okay, what was that?
You're building to attract a market, not service an existing.
Okay, all right. You're building to attract, okay? As opposed to service the actual demand that's present in the market, is what you're saying. That's fair. Okay, anybody else?
Market demand is kind of defines a group of people that have this demand. You know, demand is a desired need for something. Market demand is these people, this group of people desires or needs this particular thing.
Okay.
Yeah, they want to purchase or lease a specific property.
Right. Okay, because of their specific needs and, okay, all right. Why does the city want the proposal to be based on market demand?
So it can attract enough capital to actually follow through with the development.
Okay.
They want it to be a viable project.
Right, because market demand also goes a little bit of a step further. Just because somebody wants something doesn't mean they can afford it. Okay, and so, you know, to a certain extent, even in that previous sort of situation, you know, the demand, you know, you may need and desire something, but doesn't mean you can afford it. Does that make sense? And that's really kind of where market demand comes into play, is you've also got to have people who can afford whatever it is that you're producing. In terms of, you may want to build high-income housing, but if your whole populace in the area is low to middle income, chances are you're not going to do a very good job of occupying that housing. Okay, make sense? Okay, moving forward. Okay, when's the proposal due? We have told you that the final presentation is going to be due when?
Last day of class.
Last day of class, which is June the 20th, correct? Okay, all right. All right, when and why did the Elm 1 district decline? Okay, the history here, what is it?
Well, the dates that I saw were like mid-1940s, 50s because of the warehouse. Sorry, mid-1940s, 50s.
Okay.
It
Daryl?
was deteriorating.
1960s and 70s.
Okay.
When most of the businesses started moving to the suburbs after the war.
Yep, which is a very common sort of thing across the country. Okay.
Right. It was being abandoned and deteriorating buildings.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I don't know what I need to say.
All right. So the question 9, what is it like today?
So it lacks important retail services due to lack of population growth and large vacant parcels of land.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Well, what I read about was it was like high crime area for like theft, breaking in, and arson.
Yep.
Just overall very run down.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that sort of swirl in there together because you think, well, okay, the homeless population, are there issues that those folks are potentially, you know, contributing to? You know, is there, you know, empty buildings that potentially are being occupied to a certain extent by the, you know, homeless folks or by some sort of criminal element? You know, do you have, you know, a fair amount of whether it's drug trafficking or, you know, other issues that are sort of taking place within these properties? So, yeah. All sorts of negative things. Okay, question 10. Is the city willing to subsidize any land uses? If so, which ones and why?
Affordable housing.
Okay, affordable housing.
Nonprofit office.
Why would they be willing to subsidize a nonprofit office?
The art book.
Okay, so that's more of a cultural thing. Okay, all right. So which would make sense. So not just any nonprofit, but maybe something more culturally sensitive. Okay. What else?
Community center.
Okay, community center. Once again, kind of a cultural thing. Okay. What else? And then the homeless space. Okay. Because once again, you know, the city has a vested interest to try to do what they can to help out the homeless, because if they can do a good job, it may minimize some of the policing services that otherwise they may have to utilize to deal with folks. Okay. Question 11, what is a market analysis? Briefly, what did you learn from the market analysis? So what is the market analysis? It's a collection of information about what?
Market demand.
Okay, about market demand, about
Demographics.
About rental rates, about occupancy rates, the mixture of uses, comparables, all of that would be contained within the market analysis. And what specifically do you learn from the market analysis is you sort of learn what? About where this project can kind of fit within that in terms of what sort of rents it would potentially be able to charge, what sort of occupancy levels it would potentially be able to achieve, you know, what mix of uses may be appropriate, all of those sorts of things. Okay, good. Question 12. Must developers build every land use for which a demand has been identified in the market analysis? Why? Simple answer is no. You don't have to build every single thing. It's a question of maybe now should you? That's, you know, maybe a little bit different, but you don't have to. But part of it is also, you know, there may be other restrictions that preclude you from building every single thing that you want to build in terms of the particular use classification that you come up with. All right. Question 13. Based on the information that you've read, what do you think the city chose, or why do you think, I'm sorry, do you think the city chose the Elmwood District for redevelopment? Probably a pretty simple answer to that one. What do you think?
Blighted economic development.
Yeah, it's basically, it's kind of on its last leg, blighted, deteriorated, you know, probably land values there are cheap, they've been able to acquire that land, they want to see it put back on the tax rolls, you know, all of those sorts of things, you know, come into play, okay? All right, and there's probably, you know, not just from the local perspective, but there's probably also federal and state grant monies as well that may be available to them to, you know, help redevelop the area. Okay, question 14. How does the city expect to get its money back if it paid $10 million for the land and will sell it to the selected developer for $6 million? This is what's called a land write-down, okay? Happens quite often in the redevelopment process. This is what I was sort of saying earlier, that you may very well, or the city may have acquired a building, and they may literally just give it to the developer, you know? And you know, everybody's sort of like, wow, I can't believe, but once again, just because they've given you that doesn't inherently mean you're going to have a successful project because of all the other ancillary costs that are going to go into that redevelopment, plus if there's not market demand there, and you're not generating rents, you know, you can have a really nice retail building, but if there are no customers, it's probably not going to be successful, okay? All right, moving forward. Okay, who selects the winning development team?
City council.
There you go. Okay. Usually upon recommendation of the city staff, but okay. Design guidelines. Does the city have design requirements that affect what you can build on a site? If so, how do they affect what can be built? Be specific. So, simple answer to that first part is yes. Okay. So, how does it affect? What are some of the different things that they're restricting?
The one that I saw was parking
Height?
requirements.
Parking requirements, uses, what else?
Overall aesthetics.
Aesthetic qualities. Okay, you got that. All right, moving on. Question 17, what is the busiest street?
Madison.
And why is that important?
It's a main thoroughfare from.
It's a main thoroughfare, but is there any particular use that might benefit from that?
Yeah.
Retail. Okay, so that would be something that you might want to keep in the back of your mind. All right. Okay, where is the housing?
Up to the north, there's some.
Okay, up to the north of the property is a good portion of it, and also to the west. Okay, whereas to the east of the property is what? More of the downtown CBD. And what about to the south?
More retail.
No, the south was
So we'll check.
Transit.
the south was the state employment center.
Okay. Yep. That's
Government buildings.
Yep. Okay. All right.
Yorktown University was to the west.
So what resources surround the site? Now here they're predominantly talking about city services and other ancillary uses. So what are they? YMCA.
University.
University.
West. Museums are off to the west.
Museums. Okay. All right. Good.
They got magnet schools to the north. Highly regarded magnet schools.
Okay. The last couple of questions. All right. Do the various neighborhood groups agree about what should happen to the Elmwood district? Which groups appear to have the most political clout when they present their wishes? Okay, so first question, do they agree?
No.
No. Okay, so what do they not typically agree on?
Q-Mart, they diametrically opposed on whether to build a Q-Mart.
Okay, which is also pretty common in most, even, it's always interesting because everybody opposes the Q-Mart, but then whenever the Q-Mart potentially gets approved and opens, everybody goes there.
Yes.
So.
Exactly.
They want the homeless out of there.
Yeah.
Okay, they want the homeless out for the most part, or many of them do. What else?
No high rises.
Okay, maybe no high rises. So any particular group that you felt like maybe had the most political clout from kind of looking through the information at your first glance?
Yeah, the church and the neighborhood alliance.
Okay.
So neighborhood alliance, they say, hey, we represent 800 landowners, so sheer numbers. But then the church made a little note at the end about if you don't comply with our wishes, we may use certain congregation members that have connections.
Gotcha. There you go. Okay. All right. And then lastly, do the request of any of the neighborhood groups constitute economic or market demand as defined by your textbook? So, I mean, is there any group that has sort of bargaining power?
Well, the Jobs and Justice group is asking for things that are sort of market demand based, affordable housing, fundamental retail, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, anything else?
Everyone else is just, I want, give me.
Okay. All right. So, feel good?
Yeah.
Worn out?
No. Oh yeah.
All right. So, what I will do